friends that said they were friends disappeared off the scene very, very rapidly. Some I probably cut off to spite my own face because I thought, oh, this person is never going to accept. And it turns out actually some of my childhood friends have been the most accepting. You know, the people that really, really mattered stayed. My family have been very accepting of it. I'm quite lucky, I suppose, in that aspect.
Did you find acceptance fairly quickly, or did you find it had to happen over time? Like, did attitudes need to change before people became more accepting?
I'll take my family. It was a good example for my family, I suppose. Obviously, they'd known me as a certain person growing up. You know, it took my mum and dad quite a long time to come round just to calling me my chosen female name. So, friends, they still see part of my past because I haven't really changed as a person, and I'm not overly precious about pronouns either.
Can I say I find it very interesting that as well Sel toned it down for her friends when we went out to see them and assumed the role of the man. And Sel was very
not
well,
necessarily.
not completely Sel, but they were referring to you as your old name, and he. And it was like water off a duck's back, and I do admire that about Sel.
My viewpoint on this is that these people have known me from the age of 13. It's not that they're not going to accept it, but I'm on holiday with them, seeing my old friends 6,000 miles away. Why would I make them feel any more uncomfortable than necessary? And I'm also in a slightly Midwest environment in America.
Yeah.
I adapted it for them, partially, and for the environment I was in.
I have to say, because I met you, I think about, 2016? And prior to that, I kind of had mixed views, didn't I?
Yeah, you were a TERF fan, basically.
I was a bit of a TERF. I'll freely admit it. I mean, I want to go on to that in a minute, the TERF discussion, because this is about TERFs as well. But, you know, I had a close friend who transitioned. Now, the thing is, I've only ever known you as a woman, but with my friend, I knew my friend when my friend was still, you know, had not yet made the transition.
Yeah.
And I and all my other friends really struggled. I don't say in accepting her as a woman, but the difficulty was things like the pronouns and the name, and because we knew this person by her male name, and so we kept calling her accidentally by her male name, and it really annoyed her. The thing is, you do come across as really patient. And that really helped, and you explained a lot of stuff to me in what to expect and how to deal with it, and not to feel like this really shitty person.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can,
me that,
because I think if from my perspective, and I know probably a lot of trans people would shoot me down in an instant for it, if somebody's known you their entire lives as one thing, and then suddenly you turn up and go, this week I'm going to identify as a rabbit, and I want you to call me Bugs Bunny, you're going to struggle to deal with changing your perception of that person because you've known them for so long in one specific guise. And people automatically go, look, so-and-so, regardless of how you see them.
It's your senses.
It's an automatic reaction.
Hundreds of thousands of years of evolved senses
And,
that we've got.
and from my perspective as a trans person, I would rather give people an explanation, patience and time to understand, to come to terms with, to accept. Because ultimately, as I said to one of my trans friends, who divorced through the trans thing, had 2 children, children were instantly like, ah. And as I said to her, what you've basically done is killed their father. Metaphorically, you've just killed their father.
Just symbolically.
Now, if it was me, before I had children, would I have gone, actually, you know what, if I want to see them, I'll just put a t-shirt and jeans on, no makeup, tie my hair in a ponytail, and just for the sake of the children. And then try to explain, try to give them time, because I think if you give people time and patience and the ability to understand, then the majority of people will take it on board and they will move forward with that. And then I
do appreciate the fact that you had that patience, because it gave me guidance and helped me to actually see it from your point of view. To be honest, I thought that's when I started really disagreeing with TERFs. Can I just explain, by the way, the term TERF, because there are some people, if they are listening, may not know what it is. So it stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist, and it's essentially women who are feminists, but they don't agree with recognising anybody's change of gender. They believe that if you're born a man, you stay a man. If you're born a woman, you stay a woman. You cannot change your gender. And in fact, I think most of their issues are with people who were assigned male at birth changing to women. I don't see the same level of hostility being aimed at people born women changing to men. The problem with a lot of TERFs who come out of second wave feminism is that they've grown up in a culture where, you know, women weren't as good as men. Men were better. Women couldn't do certain things that men could do. You know, women were having to fight to be recognised or to have the same rights, and to celebrate being women. And I think what they think of as somebody transgender is a drag queen or a transvestite. And you know, with drag queens, they can be incredibly sexist. In fact, they're some of the most sexist men I've ever met. But these are not transgender people. But this is what they've got in their heads. They've got an idea of somebody coming in with massive false eyelashes, wigs, sequiny gowns, pretending to be women and saying this is what a woman is, and embracing all the very superficial sexualized images of women and saying that makes me a woman. But that's not transgender people. That is not transgender women at all. And the other point that they seem to cling on to is that, oh, you know, you're trying to say that you can woman better than me. And it's like men, you know, men saying they can woman better than women, and that's not the case at all. And in fact, I think if you're trying to sit there and intellectualize gender and say, you know, this is what makes me a woman, this is what makes you a man, it's not going to work. You need to meet these people, and they need to meet them with an open mind.
Yes.
They need to meet transgender women and meet transgender men, and you realise they're not taking the piss, they're not being rude, they're not being sexist, they're not harbouring hostility towards women. And yes, I'm sorry, but I have met a lot of trans women who do women better than cis women. You know, because and I was saying this to you earlier, most trans women I know embrace feminism, and they do understand and they do empathise with the struggles that we go through, and they are quite feminist. You know, and they don't, even if they don't necessarily mean to be. Whereas I know a lot of cis women who are all pick-me's and, oh, I hate feminists, and they're doing a lot of damage to women.
Well, it's a very complex issue, and we shouldn't confuse women trying to do the honourable thing by protecting women's rights for prejudice, because it's not. It's trying to gain a better understanding. That's what I believe the lesbian movement is trying to do. Some lesbians are trying to just reclaim the term lesbian, because lesbian is now quite a dirty word, and they're just trying to reclaim that space to discuss in earnest women's issues and really get to the root of the women's movement. And I think there's no right or wrong answer in this. That's the thing. And it's about meeting the person and understanding, I mean, in individual circumstances. I can understand where women are coming from, because what they're saying is, you know, what is this movement about? Does the trans movement, is it breaking down the patriarchy or questioning the patriarchy, or is it reinforcing it? And also they're saying, you know, is there something insidious lurking beneath some of them?
Well, can I answer that?
Yeah,
from
I think so.
From an insidious point of view. Okay, I'll go from my perspective. In the trans women that I know, there is no sexual element to it. Sex and gender is completely separate. So, and I can't speak for all, because that would be ridiculous, which is one of the reasons I'm a bit of an anti-trans person in that respect, that I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the things that the trans movement are doing. It's separate. But there are a minority that use it. I mean, and predominantly if you go down the transvestite route, the cross-dressers, you know, that's a more sexual thing.
Yeah, that's not transgender.
But it's not
transgender.
I would say that the majority of, like, the trans friends that I have, that I know, none of them is sexual. None of it's predatory. They just want, much like me, just want to get on with your life. You want to go out the door in the morning, you want to go to work, do what you do, come home, have the normal life that every other person has. The problem that you have is that you go through life with this stereotyping, and it's regardless of whether male or female, you have stereotyping. And I've been predominantly fairly lucky that I'm quite passable in public and not have many issues. I have friends that are not. doesn't change their personality, it doesn't change who they are, it doesn't change how they feel inside. It's just that the world doesn't necessarily then accept what they look like, because they can't necessarily pass in public, so they attract negative attention. For them, that must be terrible, because you're constantly being berated, you're constantly having negative comments, you're constantly walking out the door knowing full well you're going to walk past a building site, or you're going to walk past a group of teenagers on the corner and get abuse. Or you're going to be at a pub trying to have a drink with some friends on a Friday or Saturday night, and some idiot's going to start making comments. I've never had that, so I don't know how that feels.
But you respect that
But
it
I
does happen to
respect
other
that it
people.
happens to other people. I have to go through that on a daily basis, just trying to live the life that they want to live, to be happy in themselves.
If I could just draw the parallels with women's rights, I mean, this is what women have complained about for years, is street harassment. I touched on this. I suffered a lot from street harassment when I was from about 11 years old. You know, and this running commentary from males particularly, you know, telling me whether or not I was worthy enough to walk down that street, or whether I should just walk off a cliff and die, basically, because, you know, I wasn't attractive enough for them. And you're constantly seen as the sum total of your bodily parts. And I think that's where feminists and trans activists should come together and collaborate, because there's that empathy there that is unfortunately very much lacking in misogyny. The very nature of it is that it's psychopathic. It's completely lacking in empathy. That they can't put themselves in the shoes of the person they're beating down on. The other thing, if I may say, with TERFs, is that they claim that they have been struggling to be seen as more than the sum total of their genitals, and yet their very arguments against trans people is genitalia based. You have a penis, you are not a woman. You know, you're a woman, you have a vagina, you're not a man. And I'm saying, but you are arguing against yourself.
It's a purely biological argument as well, which and I understand that you know, biology is biology, and my viewpoint is I was never born female, never raised female. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I cannot turn around and say I know what it feels like to have a period every month. I know what it feels like to give
That's
child.
We're more than just a period.
Exactly.
We're more than just a period. We fight for that. Feminists fight for that.
So I can't then, as a trans person, go around saying, well, this is me, I can be a biological woman and be called a woman because of that. But at the same time, I'm not trying to do anybody harm. I'm not trying to push my agenda onto people. All I want is for, much like every feminist out there, equality, safety, be able to walk the streets without being harassed, be able to use a toilet without being told that you can't, or because I'm no harm to anybody.
No, exactly.
I'm literally going to use a toilet. This goes back to the safety, where you've got the guy in the news in Scotland who suddenly became a rapist. The guy should not be allowed.
Can I just clarify that? So a lot of the TERF argument that I hear, which winds me up incessantly, is this: women are going to be at risk of sexual abuse in toilets, and it's used to hate on trans people. Like, oh, you know, they're only saying they're trans because they want to go in the women's toilets and sexually assault women, and they make out like this happens.
No, this doesn't.
It does not happen. All right, maybe somebody has been. I don't want to
And I'm sure
piss on any victims out there where it's genuinely
But
happened.
the majority of cases, it's like you.
Come on,
it's like
99.9% of trans people do not go around sexually
It's like
assaulting
saying
people
all
in
drivers are bad
toilets.
drivers and a danger to people
Yeah,
on the roads.
because
you know.
one person caused a
It's
car
safe-
accident.
It's a real safeguarding issue that we just need to.
It's
personally
not
think
a
we should
safeguarding
have.
issue. It is an urban myth that has been perpetuated by right-wing thinkers to try and exclude trans people. And just because it's hypothetically possible does not mean that it is actually happening.
The thing is, Anne, it's just that where do you draw the line? I think the issue that a man looking like a man, no makeup, nothing at all, can literally say, I feel like a woman today, I'm going to go into the women's loos. I'm, as a mother
That's
to two
not
young
the definition of
children,
transgenderism, though.
but that's what they're...
No, it's not. The law. I'm sorry, but the law, at the end of the day, follows common sense. I know what people like to say about our justice system, but I actually think we have one of the best justice systems in the world. And ultimately, the courts always try to follow common sense and reason. And the definition of gender has been debated since the 1960s in the April Ashley case. I don't know if you know that, Corbett and Corbett, where April Ashley was a trans woman and got married. The man knew she was a trans woman because it was a scandal in the newspapers, and a petition for an annulment, which he was granted because at the time you couldn't legally change your gender. But then during that case, it was discussed what is the definition of gender, and this was repeated in a case that I studied in anti-discrimination law, a case that went to the European Human Rights about what is a man and what is a woman. And what really thoroughly annoyed me, which is partly what made me a TERF when I was younger, was they said, oh, well, you know, she used to play with dolls when she was a child, so therefore she was a woman, you know. But that's said from a cis man.
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
So, yeah, my friend who's female, cis female, play with cars, well, does that make her a man? I wear trousers, does that make me a man? You know, I'm in a male-oriented job, does that make me a man? And it annoyed me. And some feminists, and possibly turn them against the trans argument. But what I'm saying is that the law very carefully defines what is genuinely transgender and what is a kink, or what is quite literally a made-up stupid excuse for predatory behaviour by a man who clearly does not consider himself to be trans.
That's what I'm...
The law is able to distinguish that.
Right.
So no, the answer to that is no. No man can walk into a woman's toilet dressed as a man, looking like a man, having acted like a man. Look at the evidence. On a preponderance of the evidence, there is absolutely no way that that is going to be allowed. And
Right, so you're saying that it's moral
this is again an urban myth.
It's not, a lot of the trans are saying there's moral panic going on, that there's going to be men going
It's
into
hysteria,
women's loos.
foundationless hysteria.
Okay, so you think that common sense will prevail?
But what stops and ultimately what stops a cis man walking into a women's toilet and raping somebody?
Good point.
Well, look at what happened to me the other week. And I was in a nightclub and it was closing, and I was in a toilet cubicle, and a man was trying to get into a toilet with me, and then I wouldn't let him in, so he went in the cubicle next to me, which has a gap by the window, shouting, whistling, trying to make his presence felt. And then when I came out the toilet, he's standing there with his dick in his hand in a woman's cubicle.
So, now,
I won't go on to say what happened
No,
after that.
but
I did not react very well, put it that, and I had had a lot to drink. But he's not trans.
But
He's
again-
cis, very cis.
so again, but this is where the argument to me falls down, is that it doesn't matter whether you're trans or not. Anybody can walk
Yeah,
into a female
we are
toilet
more at risk than cis men.
and rape a female in a
Yeah.
toilet.
You
I
could
mean,
argue that women's only carriages that they used to have.
Oh, they were
and then
target.
They were targeted.
They were targeted.
I mean,
Well,
I've
women's
experienced
carriages then were
being
targeted because
groped
it was the
outside a
men.
bar.
Yeah.
I've had my arse grabbed and a guy
that
try
by
and
men?
Yeah.
guy try and shove his tongue down my throat.
Yeah.
I've been propositioned in bars. It's not particularly pleasant, and I don't like it. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah. Can I just add here that we are surrounded by cocks, in case you hear them, because they kept interrupting last time.
They're-
So if you hear strange noises, it's not Jules.
and it's not me dispatching one either.
Yeah.
We should say in the word cocks, we are talking about chickens, not.
No, the cocks are like the other guest on the show.
Yes,
aren't
they are.
That and Lola panting.
Yes. But they're doing no harm right now other than to my veg patch.
Mm.
You've raised some good points, and individually we know most trans women just want to get on with their life. If you look in history, there's always been people born male. Let's focus on the male here for a moment, because female trans is a totally different issue for me. I think they're separate beings, they're separate entities.
Why?
Because I think a reason for women transitioning to male is there's a difference, and there's no female to male here to represent, so I'll just clarify that we're focusing on male to
I have to say
female.
most of my gay friends would disagree and think that I am female to male, but there you go.
Yeah.
But then again, that's an example of transphobia. It's always been thrown at me, or you're like a bloke. Men say, oh, you sound like a bloke. That's what 40 fags a day. Sorry, 5, if my doctor's listening. 5 fags a day does to you. But
Yeah.
that's used as an insult all the time. You're like a bloke.
Of course it is.
You know. But it doesn't bother me. My answer is, well, there has to be one man around this town.
And I think that's what women are on the whole good at. I do think the senses of women on the whole, the ones that don't obviously go against us, as we know, which we're going to come on to, but on the whole our senses are pretty astute. And that, going back to the senses, this is where I think the moral panic is coming in about the trans movement, because it's very different when you're transitioning as an adult, you know, and you're in your 30s and you've lived your life, you've gone through your teens, your 20s, you're in your 30s, and, you know, fair enough, you know who you are. And my worry, and I can understand what worry comes from in the lesbian community, and, well, let's say the right wing, is that there is a ideology going on that is influencing the youth culture of today, and there's been a 4,000% increase of girls transitioning to boys because they're very uncomfortable with the very nature of being female and what that brings to their psyche, because being female is essentially quite an uncomfortable and anxious ridden thing. But the thing is that culture, because these young girls are picking up on that we are in a misogynistic culture. You only have to look on porn sites, Anne. If I was a girl of today, a young girl, I would want to transition. I wouldn't want to be a girl. I'd find it incredibly worrying.
But do you not think the ease of access to porn, for a start, which is completely unrealistic, should be stopped? Because you've got 11-year-olds watching porn where girls are thinking it's okay to be strangled, or wrong, completely wrong. Secondly, there is nothing wrong with giving information to people, but you should not indoctrinate.
Yes,
and that's the problem at the moment, that you've got two sides. You've got a radical feminist side that is trying to indoctrinate purely specific cis, and you've got a radical trans side that is purely trying to indoctrinate that this is right. There is no balance anymore, and the problem is you've got these two opposing sides that this pendulum is nowhere near the middle. This pendulum swinging from right to left so dramatically.
Can I just add there, because this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. I said I was very grateful for your patience, because is that I was genuinely interested in what you had to say, and I approached this with an open, respectful mind. But the trouble is, there are people out there where it's persuade me. Your friend jumps to mind, the one who wants to do the podcast with us. Come and persuade me. Come and challenge me. They're not approaching it with an open mind. They're stuck in their ways. They believe their views are right, and all they do is be deliberately obtuse over every little point that you are raising, to not see your side of it. And the trouble is, patience in that situation can sometimes be misguided.
Yeah, completely.
I don't mean to be patronising, but sometimes to make change, you have to be forceful.
I completely agree that there has to be some form of, and I'm not saying that the trans rights movement is wrong, because it's not. You know, we had the gay rights movement. This is the latest in a set of rights. But the problem is that back when we were doing gay rights, you didn't have Twitter, you didn't have cancel culture, you didn't have the opposing views of the extreme that could instantly come back at you and cancel you on Twitter or on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media platform it happens to be.
But they didn't really have a platform either, though, far right.
And the far right didn't have a platform. Because what happened was you got a group of people together, especially in the gay rights, that went on a march. They did their march, they did that. That was fine, and I have no issue with trying to force change in a positive way. But you didn't have instant retribution that somebody doesn't agree with you. Therefore, another 15 people that agree with them also jump on that one person, and that person, then that voice is cancelled. But I don't also.
It does have to be,
unfortunately, sometimes. But also, I don't agree with the extreme where you've got the activists going and pushing something to the point where they're belittling. Let's take J.K. Rowling for an example, because she makes a comment.
That's terrible.
Why would you? There is no reason for that.
Exactly.
Educate.
But I can see but the thing is, I can see the argument for that, because I've seen the slippery slope. So I've said this before. We grew up in the 80s with strong women, and feminism quietened down because it wasn't deemed necessary anymore, because we had the law, we had the legislation, but what we did look at was the enforcement, and we started to calm down. Third wave feminism was very much about being persuasive and patient and not being aggressive. It was the antithesis to second wave feminism, and the problem was we did start to slip back.
It was nudging. It was gentle nudging to the point where
but
it
wasn't
too gentle, because when you're so sweet and meek, you don't get change. You only get change through activism and actually doing something. And that's.
But it's not just change. A lot of people look at it in terms of we're on an uphill and we get to the top and we win, and then it's all plain sailing, it's all flat ground. But it's not. We're always slipping backwards. We're always slipping backwards.
The problem
because
getting
the powers
to the top
that
of the hill
be
is there is another side to that hill that you can slide back down again. And the problem is.
But it's a never-ending slope.
Yeah.
Here we go. He's always interrupting me as well. But that's my roast next Sunday. But we're always slipping back down. We never actually reach the top until. The power dynamics change, and I know, Julia, you want to make it all about capitalism. then we're going to keep on sliding back, which is why we can't stop and we can't tolerate the intolerable. And that's why I think I'm certainly very impatient with
This
Cockerels
is exactly
and
what men want to do. They want to
stop trying to silence me. But that's exactly why I'm very impatient, and I am a bit of a militant feminist, and I don't tolerate, because these people, I'm not going to change their minds. I know I'm not going to change their minds, but what I don't want to do is let them spread their word and recruit.
No,
so I want to nip them
completely
in the
agree.
bud.
That's an
I completely
ideology.
agree.
It's a form of cult.
From my perspective as well, I don't want some radical feminists tell me that suddenly now, for the last 20 years that I've been using female toilets without raping a single female, to be told that I can't use it, because in society's view, if I suddenly then start walking into a men's toilet, that's going to look really strange.
Yeah. You're more at risk in a men's toilet
I'm more at risk
than I am you going into my toilet. Yeah, I know.
So same respectful point. I don't want militant trans people speaking on my behalf to the point where I don't agree with the things that they're saying.
Okay, but going back to the senses, can you not understand the concern around children growing up with this movement? And I'm talking about the extreme people who want to propagate this as an ideology, where you've got a situation where you're telling children who are using their very, very astute innate senses that we've been programmed and wired with from evolution for hundreds of thousands of years, where we're saying to the child, no, you're looking at a woman, when the child's senses are saying, no, this is a man, and children know, and it's denying. I can understand why the concern around denying children's senses about altering their perception of reality by saying a trans woman is a woman when they know there's something different. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying not to
Okay,
say yes.
I'm a trans person that's the father of two daughters. Okay, so I don't correct in their use of the word daddy, for instance. Now, I know a lot of trans people will be horrified by that. They call me he, they call me she, they mix the pronouns up. Now,
usually it's he and daddy, and you have, and this is where I feel Cell is admirable, Cell does not deny our girls' senses in picking that up. And Cell would never do that, and I think that is being authentic, actually.
Don't you think that this is very easily remedied, though, because children will always see everything in black and white? I mean, they'll see a disabled person and probably think they're a witch out of a fairy tale, because that's very ableist fairy tales. But you can explain it to children. You can say to children, don't pick out these things, it's not very nice, it makes this person feel like that, and that's how children learn empathy, and they think, oh, okay, I won't do that. Or unless you've got an evil brat who's like, oh, I'll deliberately do that now, but that's part of growing up.
If there's a child who doesn't mean, children don't know prejudice. Children are born with the prejudice that surrounds them. If they're just going by what is their natural,
but children are also simple. But children are also simple. They will see things as, oh, that's a boy and that's a girl. They will do that. But all you need to do is gently explain to them that it's a bit more complicated. I don't know. I'm not a parent. Maybe I'm being very optimistic.
I think as they get older as well, I think you have the opportunity to explain.
What I'm trying to explain is that I don't think there's such thing as a TERF. I think what women are trying to say is they want to understand it more, and we need to debate it. We need to get beneath the surface of it all. And I think when J.K. Rowling came out and said what she said, she did not deserve that backlash. She did not deserve the hate speech.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly what J.K. Rowling did say. But
she basically said, be proud, be trans, be a trans woman. Please don't call yourself a woman, because that erodes women's rights.
But this goes back to what...
Appreciate there's a difference.
Yeah, but this is going back to presumptions about what trans people are. And like I said, I think that TERFs see the man before the transition, and see this person saying, I know what it's like to be a woman, I can be a woman, and want to dress up and in makeup and wear pink frilly dresses, and that will make me a woman. And to anybody, that's not what a woman is. I don't believe any trans person believes that's what a woman is. What defines us as women you can't explain it. You can't put a finger on it. You can't describe it. Women and men are different. We're not that different, actually. I mean, we do love to exaggerate these differences, I think. Being a woman involves a whole spectrum of personalities. Being a man involves a whole spectrum of personalities. And the trouble is having been in such misogynistic society for so long, is we think men are strong, women are weak, men are aggressive, women are submissive, men like blue and girls like pink, you know, and all this. And that's the problem. We've kind of boxed what men and women are, and I think even feminists have boxed what men and women are. I mean, I've never been a stereotypical female. You know, I liked metal, I was into horror, men would say I have a very male sense of humour. That doesn't make me a man.
No.
What I say is I'm still a woman, but I'm not a stereotypical woman, and I encompass a range of different characteristics, some of which are traditionally female, some of which are traditionally male, but I'm still a woman and I still identify as a woman. And what I'm saying is, and to me that's a feminist message, to say that I can encompass lots of different things. I'm multifaceted, and that's what a woman is. And that's to me what trans people are saying. They're bringing to the table, look, I'm a different kind of woman, but I'm still a woman. So yeah, they should be called women, and I don't agree with J.K. Rowling on that. What does she think a woman is then?
Well, a biological, a woman born with an XX.
When she says don't call yourself a woman, why? What does she think a woman is? Is she not restricting the definition of female?
A woman who's been born, who's had the experience of what it's like to be in a female body.
All right, yes. Please don't use the period argument. That really annoys me. A, there are cis women who don't have periods of fertility issues. Secondly, we are not the sum total of our bloody periods, and misogynists use that against us. Thirdly, trans people do go through their own form of struggle. They can empathise. It may not be the same, but it's a difference of degree, not of kind.